Trucker Dump for August 10th, 2010, Episode 49, Fear and Loathing of Electronic Logs.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com. Resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Howdy folks, Todd McCann here. Well, today we start what is sure to be many podcasts about electronic logs, or e-logs. That is, if I can get this sucker recorded with the John Hughes movie going on outside. You know the one. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles? Yeah. So wish me luck. I've also got a weird clicking sound in the truck right now. I hope you can't hear it. I thought it was a flagpole cable slapping against a pole across the street, but after some investigation, it's definitely coming from inside the truck. Welcome to the wonderful world of trucking and all its squeaks, clicks, and clanks. Okay, so back to something that makes me squeak. Fear and loathing of electronic logs. First of all, I'd like to thank Jason, the brains and brawn behind TruckDriverNews.com, for letting me guest post on his site as well as my blog. Forgive him, for he knows not what he does. There's a link to his site in the show notes. As I sat at a company terminal waiting for a grease job, for my truck, you pervs, I asked an older driver what he thought about our company's announcement that they would be evaluating electronic logbooks. You'd think from the horror in his eyes that I had just told him that the new CSA rules had implemented mandatory castration for all male truck drivers. This was not the first he'd heard of it. He admitted that it scared the dookie, my word, not his, out of him. He said, "I've been driving a truck since 1970. Old-timers don't take the change very well." Well, neither do us 13-year young-timers. I admit it, electronic logs freak me out. But why is that? I certainly don't have any hands-on experience with them, so why the fear and loathing? To help answer that question, I enlisted the help of my Twitter friend, Dean. His real friends know him better as @Dean0806. There's a link to his Twitter page in the show notes. Not only has Dean been using electronic logs for 6 months, he's also a regional driver who delivers tires. 10 to 15 stops throughout the week is a common occurrence for him. That makes him a perfect candidate for brain picking. If he weren't such a huge Texas Longhorn and Dallas Cowboy fan, I'd probably think he was even more brain pick worthy. Alas, we must forgive him. We all have our faults. After a flurry of emails and Twitter exchanges, I think I pretty much got the gist of this. Keep in mind that this is the way that Dean's system works. He informed me that each carrier is able to adjust these electronic demons to suit their evil desires. First, we'll get an overview, and then we'll address the concerns I still have. Electronic logs track when and where the truck goes. When it's moving, it logs you on line 3 driving. Duh. When you're stopped and the brake is pulled, it can be set to automatically log you onto line 1 off duty, line 2 sleeper berth, or line 4 on duty not driving. Dean's system defaults to line 4, on duty not driving. The city, state, and time are entered automatically. If he chooses to change anything on lines 1, 2, or 4, he can do so by going to an edit screen. He can edit the previous 8 days' logs. The driving line, however, cannot be altered. Furthermore, the system will alert you when you get close to your 11-hour driving limit, your 14-hour work limit, or your 70-hour weekly limit. Another cool feature is available when a DOT officer wants a copy of your last 8 days of logs. You simply get a fax number from them, enter the number into the computer, and the system will fax them copies. Cool, huh? So that's it in a nutshell. Now here's my concerns. Concern. What if I'm stuck in rush hour traffic? Will this be wasting my driving time? Answer. That depends. Dean informs me that his company has set up the system so that if he's moving slower than 7 miles an hour, he can log off the driving line and onto off duty. After 2 miles, or if the speed increases to 8 miles an hour, the system will put him back on the driving line automatically. Honestly, that sounds tolerable for situations like rush hour, construction, wrecks, etc. As long as the speed is below 7 miles an hour, I just have to reach down every 2 miles and pop it back up to off duty. And Lord knows it takes a while to go 2 miles in those conditions. The times I'd most hate electronic logs is during that incomprehensible traffic that goes 5 miles an hour for a mile, and then all of a sudden it picks up to 60 miles an hour. Next thing you know, you're back to 5 miles an hour. Rinse, repeat, and curse. Talk about a pain. Concern. What happens when I've used all my available drive time to get to a customer, then after I'm loaded or unloaded, the customer doesn't have any place for me to park for my mandatory 10-hour break? Answer. According to Dean, the truck will beep at you like crazy when it knows you're driving illegal, but it will allow you to drive. We truckers know that these situations happen. We also know that it's breaking the law to drive over our 11 hours. We also know that if there's no place to park, there's no place to park. Master Yoda would understand what the DOT Gestapo doesn't. Drive on, we must. Concern. Since we can't fudge the logbooks a little here and there, won't this cause a loss of productivity? Answer. My guess is yes, at least in the beginning. Ever since I started with this new company, I've been keeping track of how electronic logs would affect me. In 3 weeks' time, I've had 3, possibly 4 loads that I would have had to refuse because I knew that the electronic logs couldn't log it. I knew I could log those same loads on paper logs without a hitch. On 3 other loads, I would have delivered late due to circumstances that happened during the trip. As of now, I'm on paper logs, and I'm completely legal. I really love fudge. Conclusion. Trucking companies are going to have to rethink the way they do things. No longer will they be able to give you a load that is marginal or heck, even productive. If they do, they can expect more late pickups and deliveries and more drivers running out of driving hours before they can deliver. And because of that, they'll be doing more relays with other drivers. These relays are a pain in the hemorrhoid holder for the planners. Of course, my love of planners is well known, so perhaps I would get some joy out of watching them squirm. If that doesn't make sense to you, go back and catch the podcast called When Planners Don't. My guess is that productivity will go way down until they figure out that they can't push us as hard as they used to. The thing is, most drivers don't mind being pushed. I didn't legally log 3,100 miles last week by refusing loads that were going to be tight. I took the ones I knew I could log legally, and I refused the others. The DOT gave us rules to log by. I follow those rules, and I make money. Why can't they just leave well enough alone?
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
Okay, let's get to some feedback on the podcast that was called The Annoying One. I had a feeling I was going to get some comments on that last line in my podcast. Helmet or Heels wrote in again to say, glad to hear you had a good class. Unfortunately, it does sound like you were the annoying one. Sorry about breaking the news to you on your own blog, but what are friends for? Twitter friends, that is. Helmet or Heels. Always so heartless, I swear. Don't worry, I can take it. The evil overlord has told me that I talk too much so many times that I'm used to it. It's gotten so bad that when we're out in public now, if I start talking too much, she just reaches over and gives me a casual, tiny little pinch on the back of my arm. Hurts like hell, but it shuts me up. Kevin McKay wrote in and said, you know what else the annoying one does? Ask a bunch of questions about hypothetical situations that will never happen to anyone, but happened to him once 15 years ago. Oh boy, yeah. He goes on to say, I used to work for a company that had monthly safety meetings and would pull you into one of their regional offices when they saw an opening in your schedule. I was at one the day before I was supposed to be home, and I needed to get out of the meeting in time to make it to my next load on schedule. The annoying one asked a question about every point made during the meeting. Finally, I had to ask him if we could keep the questions to situations that are relevant to situations most drivers would plausibly be involved in, instead of bringing up crazy stories about things that happened to him once years ago. He looked at me like I had punched him, but the rest of the class, including the instructors, sighed a sigh of relief, and I made it out of there on time. Well, good for you, Kevin. Glad you got home. Like I said, I hate to single people out too, but what are we to do when the instructor won't grow a pair of gonads and shut the guy up? Thanks for your comment, Kevin. John wrote in with a quote from the podcast. Quote, and how much I talked. End quote. I guess we all know who the annoying was in your class now. Oh boy, John. Yeah, that's what I was beginning to think, but maybe not. Just a few days after orientation, I was walking across the parking lot of our yard when I heard someone screaming my name. It was my roommate, Andrew. He could have let me walk on by and I'd have never known he was there, but he didn't, so maybe I'm in the clear. This next one has a little explaining to do. You see, when I wrote this blog post, every time I wrote the annoying one, I always wrote it as TAO. And so when Heidi wrote in, she wrote, Dear TAOD, as in Toad, Todd, kind of spelled weird. Ha ha, Heidi. Ha ha. Anyway, she says, it sounds like you're having fun at camp. Keep up the writing. Your pen pal, Heidi. Well, Heidi, I appreciate you jumping on the bandwagon and assuming that I'm annoying. Well, it does seem to be the consensus. Okay, well, if you've got a comment on any of the podcasts, old or this one, write in and let me know. All my contact info is coming up. So, are you using e-logs yet? How's it going? Love them? Hate them? Tell us about it. Or maybe e-logs are looming in your future and you've got questions or concerns that I didn't address. Let us hear about them by going to abouttruckdriving.com, typing Fear and Loathing into the search bar, and leaving a comment. I can also be reached through email at truckerdump@gmail.com. My Twitter handle is @ToddMcCann. That's 2 D's, 2 C's, and 2 N's. And if you've got a friend that's concerned about e-logs, tune them into the podcast. I'll be writing about them as I learn more. And if they don't want to tune into the podcast, twist their arm until they do it. Thanks. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way.